Isn't it interesting how we react to things like a pimple, like it's a blemish, right? And in our own hearts and our own minds, we think it's something that everyone is looking at constantly, right? In our heads, we're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to go out. People are gonna look at this blemish. People are gonna see this pimple, and then people are gonna just stare at it the whole time." You know, like the Austin Powers movie where there's a guy who has a mole, and everyone's just staring at the mole, right? And it almost like we feel everyone is just going to stare at that blemish the entire time. And in reality, yes, there are times we see friends and they have a pimple. It's true. They'll have a pimple, a nice big red one. And in the beginning, we do see it. And in the beginning, we're like, oh, there's a big pimple. We're not going to say it to our friends, or some of us do. And probably what, 2, 3 minutes later, it's kind of not even important. And we're so used to it. But when you're the person with the pimple, you're so conscious of it all the time. And I would say this is very interesting. I say this is kind of interesting because when I look at human psychology is when there is something bad, when there is a blemish, when there's something that we look at and say, "Oh no, this is a terrible thing about me." We actually dwell on it so much longer than the things that are actually good. You know what I mean? Like when there's something good about us, someone like, I don't know, like say you did your eyebrows and it was done in such a perfect way that you loved it. By the way, I didn't do my eyebrows recently, but either way, right? So if you get it done really well, it's not like you sit there like constantly focusing on saying, "Oh, are people going to notice? People must be noticing my eyebrows because they are done so perfectly this time." Interestingly, when it's good things, we kind of get used to it and we move on. But when it's bad things, we kind of dwell on it. And I think that's something that we have to understand about ourselves really well too, is understand ourselves by putting ourselves into the other person's situation. Meaning, when we see a pimple, we don't even notice it for that long until it becomes a regular conversation and we don't care anymore. Like I would say the only time I would super care about a pimple of someone else's pimple is while I was talking to him, like the pimple was moving around the face. Like then I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on? The pimple's moving," right? That would be a reason for me to focus on the pimple. Or while I'm talking to the person, like there's like this white pus constantly coming out of the pimple, and you're like, right? Like those would be the only times where I would be focused on that person's pimple. But I have never ever actually seen that before. That'd be funny though if your pimple keeps moving from place to place. But in reality is when we're in that position where we see someone else, after a while, we just don't notice it anymore. We just don't. You know what I mean? And we get used to it. And I think that's one of the big benefits of human beings is we are easily getting used to things. Uh Imagine, haven't you guys ever gotten used to the smell of poop? Where someone poops or someone farts or whatever it is, and the smell is so strong, but you give it some time, and even though you're still in the smell, you just get used to it. You adapt to it really well. And I would say, knowing the adaptability of human beings, we have to understand that, yeah, we're going to have things that are bad about us. We're going to have these blemishes, whether it's a physical, mental, or spiritual blemish. And if we focus way too much on them, being conscious that other people are always watching us, this is when we end up making even bigger mistakes in life because we can't focus on the things we need to do. We're more focused about what other people are thinking about us, right? And it's kind of a lot of times we do get self conscious about these types of things too. But I hope it's something that we can realize and kind of move forward.